Grenville's Journey, Note 1, January 17th. I had a curious visitor a few days ago. She seemed to be a hunter of sorts, wrapped in animal hides and cloth, unbeknownst to the stares that even I could sense as I played the piano. "What is your name?" I asked. She was very surprised, but only waited a moment before her blank stare turned to a fading grin. She replied Madame Cartier, with a clear French accent. She had heard of me and my songs, coming to listen for the first time. I could tell that she had lost someone, the emptiness in her eyes as though she had loved and had been torn away from that love by a greater power than I could have ever imagined at the time. "How have you come to cope with your loss?" I asked. She said that it was the island itself that had awoken her. Some saw the island as hell, a curse, purgatory, and even some viewed it as a paradise, but no one had ever grasped a true understanding of what exactly this place was. "We were not the first ones to arrive here," she exclaimed, nearly making me jump off my seat. "Others had come before us. You can see it in the great spheres in the plains, in the ruins to the north. Many years ago, a city was built here, all around us." As a shiver crawled up my spine, I regretfully asked what had happened. In a moment of silence, she smiled and sincerely answered, "Mr. Grenville, perhaps you were brought here to answer that question." I thought about those words very carefully for the past few days. I will seek out these structures and see what sense can be made of them. It's better than staying here and letting more dust gather upon my piano's keys. Note 2, February 24th. I've found a guide, a fellow by the name of Rolf. Unlike those before him, he seemed unbothered by the tales of the obelisks, the spheres, and the enemies that guarded them. "They're dead," he said. "No life left in their miserable corpses, guarding the equivalent to what they have left to offer Eternum. Nothing." He spoke of a chance to spot them near the great stone structures of the island. He meant the lighthouse to the south, but perhaps there was meaning behind his expression. I asked if he had not been curious about them. He shrugged and replied, "If you have the coin or Azoth to pay me, your curiosity is my gain. Who cares who built them, as long as they're dead?" It seemed a typical mercenary's response. He had no answers to the questions I held. "No need," I responded. "The spheres are my goal. Perhaps the temple to the east as well." Note 3, April 1st. Much time has passed since my last recording of progress. It has been a long and arduous journey thus far, but Rolf's guidance has proven useful. He brought us to one of the great spheres, selecting a location where we might labor without interruption, as a great majority of the sphere was buried beneath rubble and dirt likely caused by centuries of waiting. I was introduced to a former quartermaster by the name of Madeline, who immediately insisted I call her Maddie instead. Leading a crew of about a dozen laborers in need of work, she had lost nearly everything when they were attacked and torched by their rivals, though I did not catch the name. She gave no impression that she was greatly affected by this event, only that she had no intentions of building more walls to be burned down. I asked if her men could dig. She assured me that so long as the coin was sufficient, the labor would match it if they knew what was good for them. The type of woman you'd prefer to be on the right side of. Not cruel, just stern. I reassured her that payment was a non-issue, but that lie tasted sour as it left my mouth. I'll figure something out. The secrets of this sphere must be uncovered at any cost. Note 4, April 15th. Progress has been steady. Carrying away the soil from the dig site of the great sphere uncovered the full mark carved into the stone. Maddie claims she has seen this carving on smaller spheres that were being sold at the outposts. She said that hunters had scavenged them near the temple to the east. Rolf frowned. He was very displeased by the answer she gave me. "Those were not scavenged." I could feel anger and fear in his words. "Those spheres were not buried. They were found in the rib cages of the skeletons in that area, like stone hearts." Maddie seemed very unsettled by this news, and so did her men. I tried to get more information from Rolf, but he refused to share anymore. Ever since we've started having difficulty securing provisions, we've had to send men out farther and farther to hunt. Rolf has not said much since. I could tell he was stressed over this, but he would not tell me why. Staring into the forest at the edge of our camp seemed to be a consistent way to find him. I must secure one of these spheres. Perhaps we will head over to the temple once we have finished here. Note 5, April 19th. I write this far from the dig site. Luckily I am alive to recount what happened. Rolf and I were the only ones I know who managed to escape. As the sun descended just beyond view, I laid in my tent nearly asleep when I was abruptly woken up by Rolf. Sweat poured down his face, though he did not seem tired. A distant scream caught me by surprise, and then silence. "We have to go," he exclaimed. "Now!" As he dragged me out of my tent, not a moment to grab even a single document of my research thus far, I saw a glooming, hunched figure beyond the forest edge. Moving in and out of view, it seemed as though it was hunting. Something. Us. Rolf now trembling as he dragged me along the path, it seemed fear had not clouded his judgment as he pressed me to keep moving. "Where there is one, there is at least two more you can't see," he whispered to me. Fighting the urge to recover my research, I left it all behind. This damned island, sending these infernal beings to drive us away from knowledge at every turn. Note 6. Some time has passed, though I do not know how many days it's been. Life grows densely around these obelisks, growing blue flowers unlike any I have ever seen. Azoth-infused flora. We gathered them carefully. Rolf seemed rather out of it. Hunched over about a stone throw away from the obelisk, clutching a vial of Azoth I had used to pay him, staring at the obelisk intently as though he was listening to something, or someone perhaps. I had to address him twice before he snapped out of it, and stared at me with a loss for words. After addressing him a third time rather sharply, perhaps more so than was merited, Rolf spoke. "I can feel the Azoth sing in the presence of the obelisk. What does this mean?" I only stared as my entire being felt as though I had been buried alive, barely able to breathe. Something about that made my body freeze for a moment. These obelisks hold power, and whatever that power is, the ancients of Aeterna made use of it. Or rather, it made use of them. But to what purpose, I do not know. Note 7, May 20th. Rolf again voiced his fears to me that the Azoth that lies dormant in Aeterna might awaken. The man is a fool without the courage to continue. I reminded him of the excessive life that blossomed around the obelisks. If that was their power when they lie dormant, what potential it could have to be awoken. What life and beauty it could bring. Truly is a sight to behold in my imagination. This island has already made many of our dreams a reality. He insisted that I did not know what might wake at the center spire. Ethereal beings, skeletons that circled the cursed temple might come alive if their hearts were tied to this land. I suspect our paths may soon part, though I know a promise of payment has kept him in my shadow thus far. If he proves any hindrance to my goal, I will send him away. But before that, I will need the Azoth I have paid him with to unlock the mysteries here and cast such a light that it will burn away any doubts and shadows from fearful minds. Note 8. Date unknown. I take no pride in what has happened here today, but do not assume this is a confession. Rolf refused me. He would not part with the Azoth I had given him. I explained to him in great detail that I was certain of my discovery, but lacked the means to test it with the central obelisk. With his cooperation, I might yet illuminate the secrets of the culture that had come before us. He grew agitated and said he would leave at first light, provided I did not give in. He would seek refuge with the French woman and take the Azoth with him. It was at this point I grew tired of bickering. He spoke of nameless dangers with no evidence behind them, and so I ordered him once more. He shook his head to me and began to speak, but before even a single syllable left his lips, my dagger had sunk into his throat. I had no further use for his body, only what he held. I knew this would not kill him. In Aeternum, even death is an uncertainty. Should he rise like those before him, his belongings will remain. Should our paths cross again, I would repay him for the debt which I now owe. I am moving on to the central spire. I have one shot at this. Note 9. A burnt page with fresh ink. My hands shake as I write this. I was the fool. First the spire, then a great light grew above me like the dawn of a second day. My heart leapt with hope as torches along the main road began to ignite with a bright blue flame. It was as if I had awoken the island itself. My joy was short-lived as a terrible silence filled the air. The light streaming from the spire had frozen, bright but lifeless, as if paralyzed by touching the earth. I confess I was consumed by growing dread, and I fled along the main road, the bright blue torches leading my steps, until the path came to an abrupt end. The temple ruins from before? The temple was no sanctuary. Had the flames summoned me here? Whatever had occurred at the spire had occurred here as well, awakening something terrible. I saw the blue flames that light my way inside the chests of skeletal figures circling the temple, blades drawn, marching with an ever-demeaning aura. I had assumed they were all dead. Not dead, merely sleeping. lying in wait for something, and whatever that something is, I have awoken it. What have I done? May the powers of Aeternum have mercy upon my soul.